those zoning articles before a town meeting for probably 3 years. And in that time frame, development pressures on these sites will continue to take place. The clock's not going to stop ticking in the development community on these projects. Well, they wait for the master plan to come into place. So yes, it would be great to have this as part of a master plan discussion, but there's no reason why we couldn't have an incremental step and put this into place now and then come back and incorporate it into the master plan.
And given that there's no actual projects planned at the moment that would use mixed use, what you're suggesting, I think, is that this would be a tool that we would have in our toolbox when we see what kind of development we want to encourage under the master plan. So in other words, we would have control of this because of special permit and EDR.
That's correct. And, you know, I think the fact that we're not seeing a lot of desire to put up mixed-use projects is because it's simply too hard to do so under the current zoning code, where you have to meet both the residential requirement and the business or commercial requirement. So another tool in the toolbox that can be used to help developers, to encourage developers to try mixed use, I think would be beneficial.
All right. So let me ask you another question then about special permit and EDR. The CVS that was built next to the high school.
Tie it into the article. I mean,
yeah, it does tie to the article, trust me. So what we're saying is that special permit EDR for mixed-use development protects us from the kind of things that Mr. Loretti is saying would be a danger that we would risk. My recollection when we did the CVS development was that there were things that we did not feel like we could require of that property developer, even though we were under special permit. Can you walk me back through that process and reassure me that I'm recalling this incorrectly or something?
Sure. The CVS property started off with a much different design than what you see now. At one point, the store was going to be significantly set back from Mass Ave. There was going to be a parking lot in the front yard. We were going to have a large pylon sign that might be more appropriate for a shopping center along the freeway as opposed to on Mass Ave. So I know that there are critics of the CVS store, but I think if you were to start with what was originally presented to the board, you'll see that it was significantly scaled back. We go through a pretty rigorous design review process. We're very fortunate to have an architect and a landscape architect on the board. We look at things like traffic circulation, drainage, utilities to the site. It's really a pretty thorough process, and I think it's going to take out the undesirable elements that you would see. I think the comments that were suggested about all the horrendous things that could happen with this article gave the impression that developers would be able to do this as of right. And that's not the case at all. It's all through the EDR process.
Thank you.
Okay. Welcome.
So really briefly here, I want to follow up on what Jim Doherty was saying about tax base, because I agree with him that we shouldn't be making this change under the assumption that somehow we're going to get tax property classification. But I do think that you should be considering this as a method for doing two things. The first of all is to provide us with control of development along the Mass Ave corridor on many parcels and on our other business corridors that would allow us to create pleasing development along the lines of the Capitol Square building, which I absolutely love, which we cannot do right now. Any construction that is new that you would assemble parcels for in those business districts right now would have to be either completely residential or completely commercial. And Jim's right. We get a lot more tax revenue, thank you, out of residential use as opposed to commercial use. The great thing about the ability to build mixed use would be that we would get the advantage of a more lively streetscape, expansion of business property in town, for all the other things that it brings us, more of a sense that we have a community that isn't just a bedroom community, more ability for us to buy the things we want to buy in town, less having to travel outside of town, and at the same time get the tax advantage, and the business property owner gets the advantage of multiple ways of earning income that would be provided by the residential uses that could be above the business properties. So I think if you concentrate on what the Capitol Theater building looks like and that store block as something that we can't do in future development, but this would allow us to do in future development, with the understanding that special permit and EDR gives us a lot of control. We, in other words, don't have to allow someone who wants to build a mixed-use development that we hate to actually build a mixed-use development. There is no as-of right to do so. That this is actually pretty smart change. I know we tend to be a little bit conservative about zoning changes, but I think particularly knowing how long it's going to take us to do a master plan, if we don't have this tool in our toolbox now and we decide we want it later, we don't know what development could happen in the meantime that we might not like or what opportunities we might miss. So I'm in support of this, and I strongly encourage you to be so as well.
Thank you. Mr. Fitzsimmons, you were next. You wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Bruce Fitzsimmons. One very quick point. It's been brought to my attention that